was late at night and David was alone in his small house at the edge of the colony. The wind outside howled against the thin metal walls, and the only sound inside was the ticking of a broken clock. David had worked a long day in the repair bay fixing ships that were older than himself. All he wanted now was sleep. But then he heard it. At first it was soft, like the faint drip of water. He frowned, sat up from his old chair, and listened. The sound came again, louder this time, a splash, like someone moving inside his bathroom. His heart froze. He lived, alone. No one should be inside. Slowly he reached for the tool he always kept near his bed, a heavy wrench. His hands tightened on the cold steel as he walked quietly toward the sound. Every step felt heavier, his breathing sharp in the silence. When he pushed the bathroom door slightly open, his eyes widened, steam filled the room. The broken light above flickered, and there, standing under the weak shower, was a figure. The water ran down skin that was pale blue, hair stuck to a thin face, clothes tossed in a corner, dirty, torn, and soaked with mud. It was not human. The figure turned suddenly. Her large, dark eyes glowed faintly in the light. Fear and shame flashed across her face. She covered herself with her arms and fell to her knees on the wet floor. "Please." Her voice trembled. "Please let me wash, I'm so dirty." David gripped the wrench tighter. His first thought was danger, an intruder, maybe a thief, but her voice was not sharp or threatening. It was broken, desperate. He stayed at the doorway, his jaw tense. "Who are you? How did you get in here?" The girl bowed her head. Her body shook under the cold spray of water. She whispered, "I snuck in. I had nowhere else to go. Please don't throw me out. Just let me clean myself. I'll leave after." David's mind raced. He had heard stories of alien refugees wandering near the colony. Many were captured and sold like animals. Others disappeared. People said they were dangerous, dirty, untrustworthy. Yet looking at her now, shivering and begging on the wet floor, he saw none of that. He saw only someone exhausted, broken, and scared. He took a slow step inside, lowering the wrench but not letting go. "If someone sees you here, they'll think I'm hiding a fugitive," he said quietly. She lifted her eyes, and for a moment he forgot to breathe. They were wide and shining, not with anger but with tears. "Please, I just wanted to feel clean again." The silence stretched. The sound of dripping water echoed in the small room. David's chest tightened. His common sense screamed at him to throw her out, lock the door, and forget this ever happened. But his heart whispered something else. He sighed heavily, resting the wrench against the wall. "Finish your shower, but when you're done, we need to talk." The girl's lips trembled as she nodded quickly. Relief washed over her face. She turned back under the weak stream of water, scrubbing mud and dirt from her arms like someone who hadn't touched water in weeks. David leaned against the wall, still tense. His eyes moved to her torn clothes. In the corner, they were not just dirty. They were ripped like someone had pulled her through the ground, or worse. He noticed strange marks burned into the fabric, symbols he didn't recognize. His instincts told him trouble had just walked into his life. Minutes passed. The girl stepped out, dripping, wrapping herself in a towel she must have found in the corner. She stood quietly, head lowered, as if waiting for him to shout, "Throw her outside or worse." Instead, David asked, "What's your name?" She hesitated, then whispered, "Lyra." Her voice cracked on the word like it had been too long since anyone had asked her name. David rubbed his face, feeling the weight of what had just begun. He could send her out now and forget it. But the way she looked at him with fear, shame, and a small fragile hope made him pause. Something told him this was not a simple accident, not just a girl desperate for a shower. There was more, much more. And for the first time in a long time, David felt the uneasy pull of fate knocking at his door. The house was quiet. Only the hum of the old heater filled the silence. David sat at the small wooden table, his wrench lying forgotten beside him. Across the table sat the alien girl, Lyra, wrapped in his old blanket. Her damp hair clung to her cheeks, her eyes fixed on the floor. David studied her carefully. He still could not believe what had happened just an hour ago. A stranger had broken into his home, not to steal, not to kill, but only to use his shower. He cleared his throat. "You said you'd explain after, so talk. Why are you here? Who's looking for you?" Lyra's fingers gripped the blanket tighter. Her voice was soft, almost lost in the heater's hum. "I didn't mean harm, I swear I only wanted water. It's been so long since I was clean, humans. They don't let us near their stations. They call us filthy, unwanted." Her words stung more than David expected. He had heard people in the colony talk like that before. Alien refugees were trouble, they said. They spread disease. They stole. But now, face to face, she didn't look dangerous. She looked fragile. He leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "You could have been caught. Do you know what would happen if the guards found you here?" Lyra's shoulders shook. She whispered, "Yes, I know." Then slowly, she lifted the blanket just enough to show the scars along her arms. Thin lines, some old, some fresh, running like broken paths across her blue skin. David's stomach twisted. Who did this? Her lips trembled. The markets. 2 words, yet they carried the weight of chains and screams. David sat back heavily. He had heard about the alien markets, places where refugees were sold for cheap labor or worse, he thought. Those stories were far away, not in his world. Yet this girl was living proof. "I escaped," she said, her voice shaking but steady. "They caught many of us when our ship crashed near the outskirts. Some were taken, some killed. I ran until I had nothing left. My clothes tore, my body burned, but still I ran." Her large eyes rose to meet his, tears shining in them. "Please don't hand me back. If they find me, they will put me on the block again. They will laugh, beat me, sell me for less than a tool." David clenched his jaw, his hand pressed against the cold wood of the table. He had fixed broken engines, patched ships torn by meteors, but he had no repair for this. He whispered almost to himself, "Why me? Why my house?" Lyra hesitated, then said, "Because your house had light, because I saw you once at the port. You gave a boy water when no one else would, I thought. Maybe you were kind." The memory hit him. David had indeed given a small alien child a drink of water weeks ago. He had thought nothing of it, but somehow this girl had remembered before he could answer. A loud knock shook the door. Both of them froze. David's heart pounded. He motioned for her to stay quiet and walked carefully to the door. He cracked it open. 2 men stood outside wearing the dark armor of colony guards. Their visors glowed faintly in the night. "Evening," one of them said, his voice sharp. "We're looking for a fugitive female, alien, young, dirty. Might have wandered this way. Have you seen anyone?" David forced his face to stay calm. His mind raced. Lyra sat trembling in silence behind him just a few steps away. If they pushed in, they would see her instantly. He shook his head slowly. "No one here. Just me. Been a long day at the docks." The guard's eyes narrowed, scanning the inside of the house through the small gap. "Mind if we look around?" David's throat tightened. He wanted to slam the door, but that would give them reason to enter. Instead, he forced a tired laugh. "Look around? For what? You think a refugee would hide in a mechanic's junk house?" The guard smirked, but his partner pulled him back. "Forget it, we have more ground to cover." They turned, boots clanking on the metal floor outside, and soon disappeared into the night. David closed the door slowly, locking it tight. He leaned against it, his heart still racing. When he turned, he saw Lyra's wide eyes watching him. Silent tears rolled down her cheeks. "You lied for me," she whispered, her voice shaking. David rubbed his face with both hands. "Don't thank me yet. This isn't a safe place for you. If they come back, I can't keep covering." But even as he spoke, he knew the truth. He had already made a choice. He had not turned her in, and he could not do it now. Lyra lowered her head. "I'll leave tomorrow. I promise I won't bring more danger to you." David stared at her for a long moment, then shook his head. "Tomorrow? If you step outside, they'll catch you within an hour. You don't need a shower now, you need protection." The words slipped from his mouth before he could stop them. He was already involved, and deep down, he knew something else too. This girl carried more than scars and dirt. She carried secrets. Secrets dangerous enough to bring guards to every doorstep. He had let her in for one night, but fate was telling him it would not end in one night. It was only the beginning. The night stretched long, but David could not sleep. He sat by the small window watching the faint glow of the colony lights in the distance. Beside him, on the old couch, Lyra slept uneasily. Her body twitched at times, as if her dreams were filled with fear. He wanted to believe her story was simple, just a runaway refugee, but his instinct said otherwise. The scars on her arms, the strange burned symbols on her clothes, the way the guards searched with such urgency, it was not normal. When the first light of dawn crept through the dusty glass, David stood and stretched. He decided to go outside for some air, but the moment he opened the door, his chest tightened. Tracks. In the thin dust near his house, he saw the deep imprints of armored boots. The guards had returned during the night. They had circled the house, checked the back, then left. For now, they had not broken in, but they would be back. He shut the door quickly. His eyes went to Lyra, who was now sitting up, rubbing her eyes. She looked at him, fear already in her gaze. "They came again, didn't they?" she asked softly. David nodded. "They won't stop until they catch you. Do you understand what that means?" Lyra's lips trembled. "Yes, I know. They want me alive, but not because of who I am, because of what I carry." David frowned. "What you carry?" Slowly, she pulled the blanket aside and reached under her torn clothes. From a hidden pocket, she drew out a small metallic shard. It was triangular, no bigger than David's hand, etched with glowing blue lines that shifted. Like liquid light, David's eyes widened. "What is that?" She held it close, her fingers trembling. "A memory crystal. My clan used it to store records, history, codes. But this one, it holds something else, something they would kill for." David felt a chill. He wasn't sure if she was telling the full truth, but he didn't doubt the danger. If the guards knew she had this, then it explained their desperation. Before he could ask more, a sharp sound echoed outside. The roar of engines. Heavy steps followed. The unmistakable rhythm of armored patrols. Lyra froze, clutching the shard to her chest. Her whisper cracked with fear. "They found me." David's heart raced. He grabbed her arm. "No time, we need to move now." He led her out the back door, through the narrow alley of scrap metal and broken machines. His house was surrounded by old parts from ships he had repaired over the years. They ducked low behind piles of junk as the heavy boots marched closer. The guards' voices carried through the morning air. "Search every house. The alien girl is near. She can't escape. The colony, find her dead or alive." Lyra's breath came fast, her chest rising and falling. David put a finger to his lips, urging silence. They crawled between rusted engines and broken panels. But then, a shout. "There, by the mechanic's yard." Blaster fire cracked. Sparks, flying off the metal around them. David cursed under his breath and pulled Lyra up. "Run!" They dashed through the narrow path, David's boots pounding the ground, Lyra stumbling beside him. Her legs were weak, but fear pushed her forward. The guards chased, their armor clanking, weapons firing bright beams that lit up the morning. The junkyard became a maze of hiding places and traps, and David knew it better than anyone. He ducked behind a tall engine core and kicked over a barrel of loose scrap. The metal clattered loudly, rolling across the ground, blocking the guards. For a few precious seconds, "This way," he shouted, pulling Lyra through a gap in the fence. They emerged into the open, the dry plain stretching before them. Dust rose with each hurried step. Behind them, the guards poured out of the junkyard like a wave of steel. Lyra gasped. "We can't outrun them." David scanned the horizon. His eyes caught the faint outline of an old supply tunnel half buried under the sand. He had fixed its entry once years ago before it was abandoned. "That tunnel," he pointed. "Move." They sprinted, the wind whipping. Against their faces, the sound of boots and blasters grew louder. A beam scorched the ground inches from Lyra's feet. She stumbled, nearly falling, but David caught her arm and dragged her up. "Keep going," he shouted. Finally, they reached the tunnel. Its entrance was half covered with debris. David shoved a metal plate aside and pushed Lyra in first, then crawled after her, pulling the cover back just as the guards stormed over the ridge. Inside, the tunnel was dark and damp. The air smelled of rust. Their breathing echoed off the walls as they sat in the shadows. Lyra clutched the shard tightly, her body shaking. They'll never stop. They'll keep chasing me. And now? They'll chase you too. David leaned his head back against the cold wall, his chest heaved from the run. He knew she was right. The moment he lied to the guards, the moment he chose to help her, his life had changed. He looked at her in the dim light, her eyes shining with fear and something else, hope, fragile but alive. Then we keep running, he said quietly. But if I'm risking everything, I need the truth. All of it. Lyra hesitated, then slowly nodded. I'll tell you everything, but you must promise you won't give me up no matter what you hear. David met her gaze, his voice firm. I already made that promise when I didn't open the door last night. The tunnel shook faintly with the sound of footsteps above. The hunt was not over. It was only beginning. And for the first time, David realized this was not just about saving a lost girl. This was about standing against something far larger, something powerful, something dangerous. The tunnel was silent except for their breathing. David sat with his back against the cold wall, sweat still dripping from his forehead after the chase. Lyra curled up near him, hugging her knees. The glowing shard lay hidden under her blanket, its faint light fading and pulsing like a secret heartbeat. For a long time, neither of them spoke. The danger above their heads felt heavy. The colony guards were still searching, their boots and shouts echoing faintly in the distance. Finally, David broke the silence. You should have told me from the start, Lyra. You're not just a refugee. You're carrying something that makes you a target. Her lips trembled. I didn't trust you. Humans don't usually help my kind. If I had told you everything, maybe you would have thrown me out. David shook his head. I already risked my life when I lied to those guards. You don't understand. If they find you here, they'll punish me too. Maybe worse than you. Lyra's large dark eyes lifted to his, guilt swimming inside them. Then why? Why didn't you give me up? You owe me nothing. David stared at her for a long moment. He didn't have a simple answer. Maybe it was pity, maybe anger at the guards, or maybe something deeper. But he knew one thing. He couldn't watch her, be dragged back to chains, I don't know, he admitted. Maybe I'm tired of watching people suffer while everyone else looks away. Her eyes softened, and for the first time since he met her, a faint smile touched her lips. It was weak, but it carried warmth. Then I chose right when I came here, she whispered. But the bond that had formed between them was not one either had wanted. For David, it meant danger. For Lyra, it meant dependence on a stranger she barely knew. They waited until the sounds above grew distant. Then David stood, brushing dust from his hands. We can't stay here. This tunnel won't hide us forever. They'll search it eventually. Lyra pushed, herself up, weak from exhaustion. Where will we go? He thought for a moment. His mind flashed through maps of the colony, hidden places he had seen while repairing ships and machines. There's an abandoned storage hangar near the outer rim. Nobody goes there anymore. It'll give us time. The path through the tunnel was long and dark. Lyra stumbled often, her thin body struggling to keep up. David slowed his pace without complaining. Every time she fell, he pulled her up, his rough mechanic's hands steadying her fragile frame. Hours later, they emerged from a hidden exit behind a sand dune. The colony lay in the distance, its towers glowing faintly in the early night. But around them stretched nothing but emptiness. The hangar was close, an old building half buried in dust. Its doors hung crooked, rust eating at the metal. Inside it smelled of old oil and silence, but it was shelter, and for now it was theirs. David found a broken cot and placed it near the wall. Rest. You need it. Lyra sank down, curling into the blanket. But before closing her eyes, she whispered, You saved me twice now. You should have left me, but you didn't. Why? David rubbed the back of his neck, frustrated. Because I can't watch someone beg just to wash themselves. I can't watch someone be hunted like an animal. That's not how it should be. Her eyes shone with tears. In my world, kindness is rare. You give it so freely it scares me. David said nothing. Instead, he sat near the doorway, wrench in hand, keeping watch. The night dragged on, but sleep didn't come. His thoughts circled like vultures. What if the guards found them? What if Lyra's shard brought worse enemies? He hadn't asked for this bond, but now he was tied to her fate. By morning, his fears proved true. Through the cracks of the hangar, he saw shadows moving, armored figures sweeping the dunes. The guards were still searching, their numbers greater than before. He turned quickly to Lyra. "They're coming again. We need to move." Her face turned pale. "I can't keep running. My body won't last." David's jaw tightened. He wanted to argue, but he saw the truth in her trembling hands and weak frame. She had no strength left. If he forced her to run, she would collapse. For a moment, hopelessness pressed down on him. Then his eyes fell on the shard. Its faint light flickered like a hidden fire. "Listen," he said firmly. "If you want me to keep protecting you, then I need the truth. Why is that thing so important? Why are they chasing you like you're worth more than gold?" Lyra's lips parted, her voice shaking. "Because it doesn't just hold memory, it holds a key. Coordinates to something lost long ago, something powerful. If they get it, they will control more than the colony. They will control entire systems." David stared, the weight of her words sinking in. He had thought he was hiding a runaway girl, but now he realized he was shielding the center of a storm far greater than he imagined. Outside, the guards' shouts grew louder. The hangar trembled with the sound of heavy boots drawing near. David gripped his wrench tighter. "Then it looks like our bond isn't unwanted anymore, Lyra. It's survival." Lyra looked at him with wide, tear-filled eyes. Her whisper carried both fear and trust. "Then I will stay with you, no matter what comes." The door shook violently, dust falling from the walls. The chase was far from over. It was only about to get worse. The hangar door rattled again, harder this time. The hinges groaned under the force. Dust rained down from the ceiling. And Lyra's eyes went wide with fear. David stood between her and the entrance, gripped tight on his wrench. But they both knew metal alone wouldn't hold off armored soldiers for long. "We need a way out," Lyra whispered, clutching the shard to her chest. "There's no way out," David replied, scanning the dim hangar. "Not unless—" His eyes landed on an old cargo lift in the corner, half buried under boxes and cables. He ran to it and pried open the access panel. The power was dead, but David didn't give up. He reached into his bag, pulled out a small portable core, and slammed it into the socket. The lift hummed faintly at first, then lights flickered to life. "Get in," he ordered. Lyra hesitated. "Where does it go?" "Down," David said. "Old tunnels used to lead to storage vaults. Maybe they haven't sealed them all." Lyra didn't ask more questions. She stepped in, and David followed, just as a loud crack echoed behind them. One of the guards had fired at the door lock. The lift groaned and started descending, slow and shaky. The walls around them creaked as dust fell from above. The sound of the door bursting open reached them just before they vanished into the lower level. In the dark silence of the tunnel below, Lyra leaned against the lift wall, breathing hard. David finally spoke. "You said that shard holds coordinates to something powerful. What is it, Lyra?" She looked away, silent. "Now is not the time to hide things," David said. "I deserve to know what I'm risking my life for." Lyra slowly sat down on the cold floor, fingers tightening around the glowing shard. "My family," she began, voice soft but steady, "was part of the Anthari, an ancient alien bloodline. Before the war, we protected knowledge and relics from falling into the hands of empires. We stored them in hidden places, vaults across the galaxy." David listened quietly, unsure whether to believe her. But something in her voice, pain, pride, memory, made it feel real. "My father died protecting this shard," she continued. "It's one of the last keys to a vault buried deep beneath an old system. Inside is a weapon, or maybe something more. Something the Empire's fear." David raised an eyebrow. "A weapon? No one knows what exactly lies inside," Lyra said. "But the Council wants it, and if they get it, millions will suffer." David rubbed the back of his neck. And you? Why do you carry it? Lyra lowered her head. Because I was the last one left alive. The silence after her words was deep, heavier than the dust around them. The lift stopped. The doors creaked open into a wide underground chamber filled with rusted crates and flickering lights. David helped her up. So, you're not just a runaway, he muttered. You're the last of your bloodline, and the universe is after you. Lyra looked at him, her voice almost breaking. I didn't ask for this. I didn't want to carry this burden. I just wanted to live. Just wanted to be clean. To be free. He didn't respond for a long moment. Then, without a word, he placed a hand on her shoulder. It was warm, solid, real. We'll figure it out, he said. But we can't run forever. They moved into the storage vault, finding a dark corner behind crates where they could rest. For a moment, David set up a small power lantern, and its soft glow lit Lyra's tired face. She looked at him carefully. You haven't asked what's in it for you, she said. David gave a tired smile. Maybe I don't need anything. Maybe. I just hate seeing good people treated like trash. A quiet pause, then she asked, But what if you're wrong about me? He looked into her eyes, serious now. Then I'll deal with it. But I'd rather help someone who didn't deserve it than ignore someone who did. Lyra's eyes softened, and she clutched the shard tighter. No one's ever said that to me before. Above them, faint echoes of footsteps could still be heard. The guards were moving, scanning the levels, getting closer. We'll have to keep moving, David said, standing again. If what you say is true, they won't stop until you're either captured or dead. Lyra nodded, her voice low but strong. Then I won't stop either, not until I reach the vault, not until I destroy what's inside. David turned to her sharply. Destroy it? Yes, she said. Because if I don't, someone worse will use it and the galaxy will burn. His heart pounded at the seriousness of her words. He never signed up for this. But now he was in too deep, as the lights above flickered again. And the metal groaned with the pressure of searching boots. One thing became clear to David. The truth wasn't just hidden inside a glowing shard, it was alive, breathing, trembling, and sitting right beside him. The old storage vault was quiet, but not safe. David knew the silence meant one thing. The guards were nearby, too close and maybe listening. The dust in the air danced under the soft lantern light, and the ground above them vibrated slightly with each passing patrol. Lyra sat cross-legged near the far wall, holding the shard close to her chest. Its glow had dimmed, but David guessed it was still broadcasting something. He didn't like that. Not when every second counted. He crouched near her and spoke in a low voice. If we stay here, we die. Lyra nodded slowly. Then we need to leave. The colony? David sighed. That's easier said than done. He looked around the vault, his mind racing, remembering old supply routes, underground tunnels, cargo lifts, forgotten exits, all the places he'd seen while fixing machines for the rich. Who lived high above the poor zones. I might know a way out, he said. But it's not pretty. Lyra tilted her head. What do you mean? David pointed to a broken ventilation shaft in the corner, partly covered in webbing and rust. It leads to the waste chute behind the old docks. If we can reach the port without being seen, I might be able to sneak you onto a freighter leaving. At nightfall? Freighter? She repeated. You mean a human cargo ship? David nodded. A junk hauler, mostly empty. No one checks them carefully, but it's risky. Very risky. Lyra stood up, her knees wobbling a bit. I'll take the risk. They worked fast. David pulled out his tools, pried open the shaft and cleared the debris. The space was tight and smelled of mold and metal. Lyra hesitated before crawling inside. I never thought my life would come to this, she whispered. Royal blood, crawling through trash. David chuckled softly. Welcome to the human way. They moved slowly through the narrow vent, the only light coming from the soft glow of the shard in Lyra's hands. The metal creaked under their weight, but they made it out into a deeper tunnel that connected to the colony's old waste channels. The smell hit them instantly. Rotten air, fuel, rust, and something far worse. David pulled a cloth over his mouth. Try not to breathe too deep. They walked hunched for several minutes until they found a rusted ladder leading up. At the top was a steel hatch. "This is it," David whispered. "Other side is the dock's loading bay, but just as he reached for the hatch, boom! A blast echoed through the tunnel. The wall behind them exploded in sparks and a spotlight flashed through the smoke. "There they are," shouted a guard, voice amplified through a helmet. "Don't let them escape," David cursed and grabbed Lyra's arm, dragging her up the ladder. "Climb!" Blaster fire flew past them, burning holes in the walls. Lyra climbed as fast as she could, shaking. The shard clutched in one hand. David followed, wrench in one hand, pistol in the other, one he had taken from a broken crate earlier. They burst through the hatch and fell into the dock's dark storage bay. David slammed the hatch shut and twisted a pipe through the handles, locking it. "We've got maybe a minute," he panted. Lyra's face was pale. "Where's the freighter?" David pointed to a small rusty cargo ship parked near the edge of the dock, half covered in tarps. There, they ran, hiding behind crates and cargo stacks. The dock was mostly empty, night shift workers nowhere in sight. As they reached the ship, David yanked open the maintenance hatch. "Get in." Lyra crawled inside, and he followed, sealing it shut behind them. Inside, the ship smelled like oil and old electronics. David moved to the control panel, fingers flying over the buttons. "Can you fly this?" Lyra asked, voice shaking. "No," he replied, "but I can fake the loading codes and lock the hatch from inside. It should look like cargo from the outside." He turned to her. "You're not safe yet, but this gives us a shot." The ship rumbled as the external loader started moving crates nearby. They sat together in the dark compartment, the only light from a blinking red emergency lamp. Lyra turned to him, voice soft. "Why do you keep helping me? Even now you could have run, you could have left me." David leaned his head back against the wall, eyes closed. "Because I've seen enough people thrown away. You asked me for a shower, but what you needed was dignity." Lyra blinked. "You gave me both." David didn't answer, but something heavy and unspoken filled the air between them. Suddenly the ship jolted. The cargo lift had activated. The ship was being moved. "They're loading it onto the freight track," David said, standing. "Once we're in the outer zone, we'll jump off, far from the colony." Lyra looked at the shard, then at him. "When this is over, I want to go to the vault." David raised an eyebrow. "Even if it kills you?" She nodded. "Better to die free than live caged." David smirked. "Sounds like something a human would say." The ship moved again, shaking slightly as it entered the tunnel rail system. They sat in silence, knowing the real escape hadn't started yet. This was only the first step, but it was the first step. Together. The freighter rumbled through the long underground tunnel, far from the center of the colony. Its rusted frame shook with each turn, but inside the dark cargo hold, David and Lyra sat in silence, waiting, listening, breathing. Every few seconds the ship jolted, echoing like thunder in the narrow metal shell. David held onto a beam while Lyra sat beside him, knees tucked in, the shard glowing softly in her lap. Outside, the colony was falling behind, but the danger wasn't over. David turned to her, his voice calm but serious. "When this ship slows, we'll jump. Once we're out, we head east. There's an old smuggler's path that leads into the outer wastelands." Lyra nodded. "And after that?" He met her eyes. "You show me the vault." She hesitated, then looked down at the shard. "You still want to help me even after everything?" "I gave you shelter," David said. "Then I lied for you. Then I ran with you. I think it's a bit late to change my mind." Lyra gave a faint smile. "Then I need to tell you the rest." David raised an eyebrow. "There's more?" She took a slow breath. "The vault isn't just a place filled with dangerous knowledge or weapons. It holds something else." David leaned in. "What?" "A message," she whispered. "My ancestors recorded a warning. Something about a coming war. One that would destroy not just our kind, but yours too." David frowned. "Why hide it?" "Because no one believed it at first," she said. "Then they started dying. Whole colonies vanished. Some said it was plague, others said it was sabotage. But my father believed it was something worse, something ancient waking up again." David. sat back, silent for a moment. And this shard leads to that vault? Lyra nodded. It's the last one that exists. If it's lost, the warning is lost with it. David looked at her, his voice quiet. Then we protect it together. Suddenly, the ship hissed. It was slowing, gears grinding to a stop. Lights flickered overhead and a loud metallic clank echoed through the hold. This is it, David whispered, grabbing his pack. We jump now or never. He pried open the side hatch, cool desert air rushing in. Outside, the transport rail had stopped, near a broken track segment, far from the colony walls. Go, he said, helping Lyra down first, then jumping behind her. The two dropped onto the dusty ground, wind kicking up sand around their boots. In the distance, the colony lights faded behind rocky hills. They ran, using the night as cover. The stars above were clear, sharp, and silent witnesses to their escape. After nearly an hour of walking through the open plains, they found a hidden cave carved into a rock wall, an old smuggler's hideout David had used long ago. Inside, it was cool and quiet, the walls lined with broken crates and old tech. They finally stopped, resting on an old blanket. Both breathing hard, Lyra turned to him. Why do you do this? You had nothing to gain. You gave up your home, your safety, everything. David looked at her, tired eyes still full of fight. Maybe I was tired of surviving alone. Maybe you reminded me what it means to protect something that matters. She blinked, her voice soft. And do I matter? He didn't answer right away. He reached over, took her hand gently and said, You didn't ask for help, you asked for soap and water. But what I saw was someone who needed more. Respect, safety, freedom. Her throat tightened. No one's ever said that to me. He squeezed her hand. Get some sleep, we move at dawn. She laid down, her head resting on his shoulder, and for the first time in days, she slept peacefully. When morning came, the air was still. David stood at the cave entrance watching the sunrise paint the sky in gold. Behind him, Lyra stirred awake, rubbing her eyes. We made it, she said softly. For now, David replied. But the path ahead will be harder. I'm not afraid anymore, Lyra said, standing beside him. Because you're with me. David smiled faintly. That's the promise, right? You're not alone anymore. She looked at the shard in her hand, its light warm and steady. Then let's find the vault, she said. Let's finish what my father started. David placed a hand on her shoulder. Together. And with that, they stepped into the rising light side by side, hunted by an empire, guided by a secret but bound by something stronger than blood. A promise.